As the Third Reich collapsed into rubble and ash during the spring of 1945, the proud and ruthless machinery of the Nazi regime found itself cornered, desperate, and stripped of its terrifying power. Amidst this chaotic surrender, a group of high-ranking SS officers, men who had orchestrated unspeakable horrors across Europe, attempted to cling to their final shreds of aristocratic military pride by demanding to retain their ceremonial swords upon capitulation. They believed their status as elite commanders exempted them from the raw humiliation of total defeat, but they quickly realized they were not dealing with a typical bureaucratic military leader. Instead, they stood face to face with General George S. Patton, a man whose fierce warrior ethos and utter contempt for Nazi arrogance would dictate a legendary response. If you want to uncover the raw, unvarnished truths of military history and ensure you never miss these gripping accounts of wartime leadership, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this incredible story, and leave a comment below about what you find most surprising. To understand the explosive nature of this specific confrontation, one must grasp the profound psychological weight that the ceremonial sword carried within the ranks of Adolf Hitler's elite guard. For the Schutzstaffel, or SS, the sword was not merely a decorative piece of metal or a standard uniform accessory, but a sacred talisman of racial purity, absolute loyalty, and unquestioned authority over life and death. These weapons were often awarded in solemn, torchlit ceremonies designed to forge an unbreakable bond between the officer, the occult-tinged mythology of the regime, and the Führer himself. As Allied forces advanced deep into Germany, capturing these officers meant stripping away the terrifying aura that had paralyzed a continent for over a decade. When the American Third Army, under Patton's aggressive command, swept through Bavaria and liberated concentration camps, the true, grotesque nature of the SS was laid bare before the world, transforming the traditional rules of gentlemanly warfare into a grim exercise in historical justice and profound moral reckoning. General George S. Patton was a military anachronism, a man who deeply believed in the ancient codes of chivalry, reincarnation, and the destiny of the warrior, yet he possessed a modern, lethal understanding of mechanized warfare. He wore ivory-handled revolvers, demanded immaculate discipline from his troops, and respected the martial traditions of professional soldiers, but his tolerance vanished completely when it came to the fanatical ideologues of the Nazi Party. Patton did not view the SS as honorable combatants or worthy adversaries. He viewed them as a criminal syndicate, a cancer that had corrupted the professional German military and initiated a reign of terror. When the defeated SS commanders were brought before the American lines, they foolishly expected to be treated with the aristocratic deference traditionally afforded to captured officers of high rank. They marched into the American headquarters with their heads held high, chests adorned with medals, and their hands resting defiantly on the hilts of their meticulously crafted blades, completely oblivious to the storm they were about to trigger. The tension in the command tent was palpable as the lead SS officer, speaking through an interpreter, formally requested that he and his subordinates be allowed to retain their sidearms and ceremonial swords as a matter of professional courtesy and personal honor. The request was rooted in an old European military tradition where defeated officers of noble standing were permitted to keep their swords as a sign of respect for their brave conduct on the battlefield. However, the American soldiers standing guard knew that General Patton had just witnessed the horrifying conditions of the Ohrdruf concentration camp, a subcamp of Buchenwald, where the brutal handiwork of these exact SS units was frozen in the starved corpses of thousands of victims. Patton's eyes, known for their piercing and terrifying intensity, locked onto the German commanders as the translation was delivered, and the silence that followed was heavy with the realization that the old world of chivalric warfare had died the moment the death camps were built. Instead of offering a diplomatic nod or a compromise, Patton's reaction was a masterclass in psychological dominance, military authority, and righteous fury that shattered the remaining illusions of the captive Nazi leadership. He did not engage in a prolonged debate about international law or military protocols, nor did he grant them the satisfaction of a grand, theatrical argument. Patton simply looked at the arrogant demands of the SS officers and issued a cold, razor-sharp directive that dismantled their pride in an instant, ordering his men to strip the Germans of every weapon, emblem, and luxury immediately. He made it clear that murderers did not get to dictate terms of honor, and that their beloved swords, which had symbolized terror rather than bravery, would be confiscated as mere trinkets of a fallen, criminal enterprise. The sheer humiliation of having their sacred blades unceremoniously yanked from their belts by ordinary American infantrymen was a psychological blow from which the proud SS commanders would never truly recover. This decisive act of stripping the SS officers of their ultimate status symbols became a powerful metaphor for the broader Allied mission of total, uncompromising denazification across the occupied European continent. Patton understood that to defeat fascism entirely, One had to destroy not just its tanks and factories, but its deeply ingrained myths of superiority, prestige, and untouchable grandeur. By treating the elite of the Third Reich as common criminals rather than legendary knights, he sent a clear message to both the conquered population and his own troops about the absolute nature of justice. As we reach the exact midpoint of this historical journey into the heart of wartime confrontation, please consider supporting our work by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing it with a fellow history enthusiast, and leaving a detailed comment about your thoughts on Patton's actions. The confiscation of the SS swords was not an isolated incident of wartime anger, but a reflection of Patton's complex and often controversial evolution regarding how the defeated German populace and military should be handled. In the immediate aftermath of the victory in Europe, Patton found himself appointed as the military governor of Bavaria, a position that required him to oversee the monumental task of rebuilding a shattered society while rooting out Nazi influence. Ironically, while he was merciless with the fanatical SS, Patton would later face immense political scrutiny and eventual removal from his post for his pragmatic, sometimes overly lenient utilization of regular Wehrmacht officers to restore basic public utilities. He famously remarked to journalists that ordinary Nazis were often just municipal workers who joined the party out of professional necessity, a statement that caused a massive public outcry in the United States and demonstrated the fine, dangerous line between practical governance and moral compromise. Yet, his uncompromising stance during the initial surrenders, particularly regarding the elite units, remained a defining chapter of his legendary and fiercely independent command style. The swords taken from the SS officers were not thrown into a random melting pot. Many were kept as war trophies by the Allied soldiers who had fought through the blood-soaked hedgerows of Normandy and the freezing forests of the Ardennes. For the average American GI, holding the captured blade of an SS commander was the ultimate tangible proof that the monster had been slain and that the terror which had gripped the world for 12 long years was finally over. Patton himself collected several significant artifacts from the war, viewing them as historical markers of a titanic struggle between civilization and a dark, regressive force that had attempted to plunge humanity into a new medieval dark age. Historians have often analyzed Patton's strict enforcement of unconditional surrender at the micro-level as a crucial psychological tool that prevented the rise of a new stab-in-the-back myth within Germany. Following World War I, many Germans believed their military had not been truly defeated on the battlefield, a dangerous lie that Hitler exploited to rise to power decades later. By ensuring that the elite forces of the regime were visibly disarmed, humiliated, and stripped of their traditional military honors like ceremonial swords, Patton helped guarantee that the defeat of 1945 was absolute, undeniable, and universally understood. The visual image of arrogant SS leaders standing empty-handed, their weapons piled loosely in the back of American supply trucks, crushed any lingering romantic notions of a glorious, undefeated resistance. The confrontation over the swords also highlighted the deep contrast between Patton's public persona as a ruthless, larger-than-life warrior and his private moments of profound reflection on the tragedy and cost of global conflict. While he presented a terrifying exterior to the enemy, his diaries reveal a man who was deeply exhausted by the endless spectacle of death and acutely aware of the heavy burden of post-war reconstruction. He knew that the physical warfare was ending, but the ideological war for the soul and future of Europe was just beginning as the shadow of the Soviet Union began to loom large over the eastern borders. Disarming the SS was a simple task compared to the looming geopolitical nightmare of the Cold War, a conflict that Patton predicted with startling accuracy before his untimely death in a car accident later that year. The legacy of George S. Patton remains a subject of intense debate among military strategists and historians worldwide, but his instinctive understanding of how to handle the arrogance of the defeated SS remains unquestioned. He recognized that symbols matter immensely in warfare, and that allowing a genocidal elite to walk away with their tokens of prestige would be an insult to the millions who suffered under their rule. His actions in that Bavarian command tent reinforced the idea that true military honor cannot exist without a foundation of basic human morality and adherence to the laws of civilization. The story of the SS swords serves as a timeless reminder that when tyranny is defeated, it must be stripped of its grandeur entirely, leaving no room for the preservation of its dangerous, idealized myths. As the decades have passed since that fateful spring of 1945, the physical swords themselves have scattered into private collections and museums around the globe, serving as silent, chilling witnesses to a dark era. When modern viewers look at these weapons behind glass, they often see the intricate runes and fine craftsmanship, but the true historical value lies in the knowledge of how they were forcibly taken away. They represent the moment when the illusion of Nazi invincibility was permanently shattered by leaders who refused to blink in the face of fanatical intimidation. Patton's refusal to grant the SS their final request remains a powerful vignette of a commander who understood that justice must be visible, immediate, and entirely uncompromising when dealing with the architects of absolute evil. The psychological impact on the regular German soldiers who witnessed the total disarmament of their elite counterparts was profound, effectively breaking the chain of command and accelerating the peaceful surrender of remaining pockets of resistance. When word spread that even the feared SS was being stripped of their ceremonial weapons and treated without special privileges, many regular Wehrmacht units realized that further resistance was completely futile. This rapid collapse of morale undoubtedly saved countless lives on both sides during the final, chaotic days of the European theater, preventing a prolonged and bloody guerrilla warfare campaign in the Bavarian Alps. Patton's calculated harshness toward the Nazi leadership was, in reality, a strategic move that brought a swifter, cleaner end to the most destructive conflict in human history. It is also worth noting how Patton's actions contrasted sharply with the behavior of other Allied commanders, some of whom sought to maintain a polite, traditional distance from the uncomfortable realities of the regime's atrocities during initial surrender proceedings. Patton's willingness to confront the enemy's leadership directly and look them in the eye while dismantling their pride reflected his unique, hands-on approach to warfare and psychological operations. He never allowed his men or his enemies to forget the human cost of the war, constantly demanding that local German civilians and captured troops march through the liberated camps to witness the horrors firsthand. The refusal to allow the SS to keep their swords was entirely consistent with this philosophy of forcing the perpetrators of wartime atrocities to face the raw, unvarnished reality of their moral bankruptcy. The dynamic between Patton and his superiors, including General Dwight D. Eisenhower, was often strained by Patton's outspoken nature, but his handling of tactical surrenders was precisely what the Allied High Command needed to secure total victory. Eisenhower relied on Patton's aggressive drive to break the German army, even while constantly managing the political fallout caused by Patton's controversial public statements and impulsive behavior. The incident with the SS swords stands out as a moment where Patton's natural instincts aligned perfectly with the moral imperatives of the Allied cause, delivering a swift and necessary blow to the dark heart of the Nazi regime's pride. It showcased a rare alignment of Patton's old-school warrior ideals with the modern necessity of destroying a uniquely evil political ideology. In the grand tapestry of World War II history, small personal interactions often reveal more about the character of the participants than the massive movements of entire army groups across a map. The brief, intense standoff between an American general and a group of defeated war criminals over a few pieces of ceremonial steel distills the entire moral weight of the conflict into a single, unforgettable scene. It forces us to confront questions about honor, accountability, and how a civilized society should treat those who have abandoned all civilized norms in pursuit of absolute power. Patton's answer was definitive, echoing down through history as a blueprint for how to handle the remnants of tyranny with firm, unyielding resolve. Today, as we look back on the towering figure of General George S. Patton, we see a flawed, brilliant, and deeply complex individual whose actions continue to inspire, educate, and provoke intense discussion among generations of history students. His uncompromising stance against the elite of the Third Reich reminds us that leadership requires not just tactical skill on the battlefield, but the moral courage to make difficult, symbolic decisions that define the ethical boundaries of victory. The story of what Patton did when the SS demanded to keep their swords remains a vital, compelling narrative of historical justice, demonstrating that true honor is earned through righteous conduct, never preserved through the mere possession of a weapon. The memory of this extraordinary historical event underscores the enduring importance of preserving the true, unfiltered stories of wartime courage, leadership dilemmas, and the profound lessons bought with the sacrifices of those who fought for freedom. If this deep dive into the uncompromising world of General Patton has broadened your understanding of World War II or moved you intellectually, please subscribe to the channel right now, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story of justice, and leave a comment sharing what you didn't know before or what you found most interesting about this legendary historical confrontation.